Hi and welcome to a new episode of Learning Programming. Now what I've decided to do, if you've noticed, I've got a lot of videos on programming in C and programming in PHP on YouTube and on the internet in general. What I decided to do after doing a course in Objective-C, which is the language used in iPhone development, and I'm also doing a course in C++ as well. So what I decided to do is to just start all over again from absolute beginning, for the benefit of doubt for anyone that hasn't done any programming before in their life. And I am going to start with the C language. Now, give it a little bit of introduction what programming is all about. Let's start from absolute beginning. What is programming? What? Now, sorry for the handwriting, but what that says here is what is programming. So some of you might guess that programming is a collection of statements, commands, instructions for an equipment, piece of equipment or hardware or a system to function in a certain way. So it's just a collection, a series of commands. So if we say that programming is a set of instructions to perform a function. For example, if we had a robot and we said to the robot, walk 10 steps and then turn left, pick up item, that would be a program that would execute in sequence. Walk 10 steps, turn left, pick up item. So that's the basic introduction of what programming is. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about C programming and where C programming came from and what C program is used for as well. Hi and welcome back. Now I'm not going to bore you with some history of the C language, which is the first language that we're going to cover in this course. But what I am going to tell you is no prize for guessing. Prior to C there was a language called B. And B language was used in Unix system. So the operating system called Unix, they used a language called B, and it wasn't quite developed and it wasn't quite established in the market. So what they decided to do was develop a new language that would be used to further expand on the Unix system. So they came up with a language called C. The language C is a low-level language. Well, very close to machine code, where in machine code you've got binary. So if we go back to here, and we said you've got binary, which is basically a collection of 1, 0, 1, zeros, ones and zeros. The 1 basically means on. So if you think of a switch, when the switch is switched on, it's on, that means 1, and when it's switched off, it's 0. And inside the computer you've got your microprocessors, the chips itself, which is, as you know, a processor. And inside that, the main technology behind the processor is what's called a transistor. So the old ancient computers, they use these transistors. And what a transistor is like a switch on, switch off. So every time there's a signal passing through the wire, it means on, which is 1, and if it's off, it's 0. So that's binary, and from binary, the next level up from that is assembler code. Right, so you've got assembler programming language, which is, it's got some instructions, a bit of binary, and on top of that a bit of memory, and then you've got some things like commands or statements such as add, subtract, sub, add, all these things, and they're used for machine programming. And obviously that's very difficult to learn, as well as just programming directly into a binary and making sense of it. So they developed something slightly higher, which is more meaningful and more in the human natural language, which is the English language, and they developed C. After the C programming, which is a procedural programming language, they then expanded into different branches. You've got your C++. They added the concept of object-oriented programming, and we're going to go into that on a later stage, not in this tutorial, where we're going to talk about C programming, which doesn't have any object-oriented concepts at all. But when we do get to cover C++ or the other languages I'm going to discuss in a moment, then we'll start talking about what object-oriented is all about, and we'll define what objects are. And from the C language, they also came up with Objective-C. Now, Objective-C is used for the Macintosh, and it's used on all the all the latest technology stuff, like you've got iPhone, you've got iPad, so all these things, they use this language called Objective-C. Objective-C is another object-oriented programming, so C plus objects. That's basically what Objective-C is all about. And then you also have C#, which took some things from C++, because Microsoft developed C#. They took C++, they took a bit of C, and they came up with their own language, which is very close to both those two. So they're very close, so it's easier to learn. And that's Objective-C is slightly different than C++. The syntax is just flipped the other way around, so it does. So learning C++ is not going to really benefit you in learning Objective-C, unless it might benefit you in the sense that at least you'll have an understanding of objects. And obviously from C as well, you got your Java. So if you've heard of Java programming, that came from C. So everything, as you can see, originated from C, and then they then started developing each language, and then you have all these other languages as well, such as Python, Ruby. You've got just so many to mention in this tutorial, to be honest with you, and we're not going to cover all of them. What I am doing, I will be covering C#, and I'll be covering C++, I'll be covering C, and I'll be covering Objective-C. I might later on move into Java and talk about JSP, which is the web side of Java, Java Servlet as well. So we might discuss that, but I haven't quite decided if I'm going to get tutorials on that or not. But for the moment, we're here on C. So in the next lessons, I'll be talking about C and the basic syntax of C programming. We might start a short code introduction on the board before we go into the computer. Alright, see you in the next tutorial.